A U.S. official tells CBS News that a Kremlin representative will meet with President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner in Miami on Saturday. It comes as Ukrainian and European officials met in Berlin this week to discuss a plan to end Russia's war in Ukraine. But as the conflict rages on, Ukrainian families continue to seek answers about their children who have been reported missing. Earlier this year, Ukraine's National Information Bureau estimated nearly 20,000 children have been forcibly removed to Russia, Belarus, and other regions. Some researchers believe many of these children have been sent to Russian re-education camps. For more, let's bring in CBS News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Margaret Brennan. She's also moderator of Face the Nation. Margaret, thank you for being here. Why are these children ending up in Russia? What's their objective?
Well, Russia denies that this is a state-sponsored kidnapping scheme to indoctrinate the children, basically destroy the Ukrainian identity, and for some, provide military training. But that is, of course, what Ukrainian officials say is happening. It is also what war crimes investigators have presented evidence to back up, including to testimony to Congress recently. The head of the program at Yale that does a lot of this investigating said that they found that 18% of the facilities that they have tracked in Russian territory where Ukrainian children are brought, the kids there underwent military training, the theory being that they would be turned around and used as fodder on the battlefield itself. The reason that we are talking about this is also because it was this scheme that led to the international indictment of Vladimir Putin on the basis of committing these war crimes. So the international community says it's happening, war crimes investigators happening, and the Ukrainian officials who are trying to get an end to the fighting also want this dealt with, but they just want a release without condition of these kids, some of whom are being funneled into these camps and eventually put up for adoption.
You mentioned the war crimes investigators you've been speaking with. You've also been talking to Ukrainian officials and some children who've been returned after being taken. What have they told you?
You know, I don't think I'll ever forget meeting with some of those kids just 2 years ago. That's how long we've been tracking this problem, who were recounting during a trip to the United Nations why they thought it was worth repeating the details of some of the worst days of their lives. One little boy, Ilya, told us about watching his mother die in a missile attack that Russia had carried out, and what then happened to him in his trauma when he was taken to a hospital. He was given treatment, but he said the doctors there told him to repeat phrases in Russian, to praise Russia, to not praise Ukraine, to basically treat him as if he were someone to be erased in terms of identity and in terms of the past. He was eventually reunited with his grandmother, but he and these other children were brought to the United States by Ukrainian officials to testify at the UN. Some of them have testified in Washington because they believe in telling their stories that the world will care and that the world will make a difference here in terms of pressing for sanctions or something. And in Washington, it has gotten attention. We've seen bipartisan support. In fact, there was a bill pushed forward by Senator Klobuchar, Senator Katie Britt, a Republican, Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican, to try to label Russia a state sponsor of terrorism solely on the grounds of what it is doing with this scheme of kidnapping. Of course, Russia says they're taking care of these kids and that it is all a humanitarian issue.
Is that legislation going to go anywhere? Is the U.S. government doing anything else to try and get these kids back safely?
Well, you know, that legislation, along with what is a veto-proof majority to sanction Russia on another basis entirely, it's really just up to leadership in the Senate to put it forward because they have the votes to pass it. They haven't. So that's a political choice. Separately, there is funding that was tucked into the NDAA, that defense bill that was signed or is about to be signed by the president, that could restore some funding to the research programs to at least help track these kids. It's pretty complicated in the middle of a war to try to track where these children are. And in the research that Yale has conducted, they've done things like compare photos from adoption agencies to images they've found online of kids and put two and two together or tracked some of them. And so conducting that kind of research to help Ukraine is something that may need more appropriators to get involved with. So we'll see if the State Department restores some of its programs, and that's an area to watch if the U.S. tries to really put its shoulder behind these efforts.
Margaret Brennan, thank you so much.
Thank you.